Good morning, guys. So it's a nice, cool morning. It's in the 60s, and if you know, it's already been in the high 80s. But the last couple days, it's been a bit cooler, and I didn't have to worry about my squash too much because they're established enough and we're not going below freezing. If you saw my video, I actually had a squash plant that was doing well into 35-degree weather until we got a freeze below 32, like a real freeze. And then it was just killed off. But this is my Kozal squash. That's mostly what I have planted outside right this second in these beds, and it's my first female flower that's open of the season. You can see the little fruit right here at the bottom. That's how you know it's a female. And I'm really excited because I have such a hard time growing squash with the squash bugs, and I've already found and squished a squash bug yesterday that was hanging out on my blackberries in the bed right in front of this bed, and this is also in the blackberry bed. I try to maximize all the space possible by growing at all different levels. So I popped in these squash to see how they would do, even though this bed's a little more acidic, and they're doing amazing. So I'm really excited. It's not the only plant with female flowers. This is a female fruit. You can see the fruit at the end of the flower. That's how you know it's female, because male flowers don't have fruit, which is actually the ovary to the flower. And the seeds inside of it would be the offspring. So you could do this a couple of ways. You could use a Q-tip to get the pollen out of the male flower and pollinate this flower. However, right over here in this other bed, which is why I think it's such a good idea to grow multiple squash plants at one time. Because look at this. I have this beautiful male flower. I have one right here and another one right here. Now, I'm going to choose the one that I think is the best because, you know, I have that option with there being multiple flowers. And these are also Kozal squash, so it's the same type of plant. So these squash are all right here, and now I have flowers. So when I first tried to grow squash, I had an issue with them not getting pollinated because I only had 1 or 2 squash plants, and there just wasn't male flowers open at the same time as the females. So having multiple plants kind of ensures that you still have male and female flowers. Now, a plant will produce both flowers. It just, having multiple plants is nice because look, this one has male flowers on it. They're not open, you know, and the one that was open yesterday is closed now, and it will not reopen. So what I'm going to do is, see this flower right here? I'm going to strip all the petals off. That way I can kind of get to the pollen in the center. So I'm going to do that right now. I can't show it because I am currently holding the phone right in the other hand. So here it is. I just pulled them back. You can pull them off completely. And then what I'm going to do is just rub this into the female flower, all over it. I want to make sure it's really nice and well pollinated, and I don't know how well you can see it, but you can see actually some of the yellow on it. That is the pollen, and so this flower is more than pollinated, but I'm just going to overdo it because I'm super excited about this being the first squash. And you can see where the male flower doesn't have as much pollen on it. It's not as yellow. And that's it. Now, if you are trying to save for seeds and you would let this get ridiculously big, you could take a little rubber band or something and close this squash flower like this. Usually those little girl hair ties that you find, the little tiny rubber ones, you could use on there, and those work really well. Anything, you could use twine, dental floss, anything to just close this flower up, but it's not necessary unless you're saving seeds and you want to ensure it's not cross-pollinated. And so that's it. Just like that, that female flower is pollinated, and hopefully we get our first squash within the next 3 to 4 days. It may grow a little slower because it is cooler weather, but hey, it'll heat back up before we know it, and squash will start growing rapidly. Squash are kind of like okra. If you've grown okra, you probably know that, you know, you have a very short window of time to get out there and pick those okra because they get really woody once they get larger. Now, squash do too. Certain types of squash Like zucchini, if you leave it on there, it will eventually become kind of woody. It will get a hard rind and it will become really seedy and it's hard to eat. I did have some squash last year that were given to me, and while most were good, I ended up popping them in the freezer without cooking them first, so that when I took them out, they were kind of mushy because they had gotten so hard from just growing too long. Zucchini are really designed as a summer squash because we eat them during the summer fresh. They don't store well, and even if you let them get hard, they tend to rot in the center, and then that rot eventually comes to the outside. So there are many times that you can cut into a zucchini and be surprised that it's rotten if you wait too long to eat it. So that's why I'm kind of out here, and although there have been a ton of pollinators, bees, flies, wasps, you name it, it's out here pollinating, I'm not going to take the chance. I am excited to get ahead of these squash beetles. I'm excited to actually get some squash for once early on. That's why I was so adamant when I saw those grow lights on sale that I get them and start some plants inside. So these were plants that were started in my house, and I really wanted to share that with you. I know I've made videos on it in the past, but sometimes when you've made so many videos, it kind of gets buried and hard to find. I'm excited. First, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to feed this flower to my geese. I'm going to walk up front to the other squash by my apple tree and see if maybe there's some more. So they're still in this area, you can see. And here, guys, do you want this flower? So the spent flower doesn't get wasted. It looks like they're going for it. Kind of. Really? Oh no, the baby's eating it. Look at it. There we go. It kind of just ensures that things don't get wasted. I want to use everything possible. And actually, look at this. I know this was mostly supposed to be about squash, but look at that. That is a ripe strawberry right there. Seascape strawberry. These are our 2-year-old plants. They're probably 3 years old because I actually think that the plants themselves were a year old, and then I planted them. So they're probably 3 because I've had them for over a year. Second year I've had them. So, okay, let's go to the other squash patch underneath that little Jerusalem apple tree and see if maybe we have some female flowers open too. Guys, I'm right here, and this apple tree that we just planted is flowering. Now, unless bees come from forever away, none of our other apple trees have been allowed to flower this year, other than our crab apple. And so these could pollinate with that, but we're not concerned with getting fruit because we just want the roots to develop well this season. But oh, aren't these beautiful? So pretty. Lexi is loving the flower. She's so excited. And the boys are excited to have apples eventually. I just saw a little garden lizard down there in the squash plant. So there are actually a lot of Melflowers open. And if you remember the other day, we just came out here and harvested all of these Melflowers to eat. And I'm not seeing any female squash. I am seeing female squash flowers. You see one there. I'm just not seeing any open. But I wanted to make sure, because if the other plant, which was flowering way far behind, has them opening, there was a chance that these could be too. You can see there's kind of a few weeds in here. This is a cool thing about note. They just pull out so easily. But you can see the onions growing, this little lettuce hiding underneath here. So let me pull these out. Oh no, hold on. Look at this. This is a thorny little blackberry. Try not to grow those dewberries, the wild ones, even though they grow so well here in Southeast Texas, because they carry a lot of diseases that'll wipe out my thornless blackberries, which we do not want. I love my thornless blackberries. Besides the fact they're thornless and my kids don't get all cut up when harvesting them. No, all these flowers, none are open yet. I have 5 of these squash under here, if you're wondering how many there are. They were really tiny. I actually have videos showing them. Just since I made the aphid video, these squash have like quadrupled in size. So, better get a lot of squash this year. The goal is, I'm going to freeze most of these, make them into candy and everything else, but the goal is to have so many squash that I can save them throughout the winter, have squash seed in the winter with my family, even if I'm freezing it, dehydrating it, whatever the case. So we're just gonna work as hard as we can during the summer to grow what we can for winter too. So that's kind of the goal of this year, is to become more self-sufficient and focus on our diets. I don't see any female squash flowers on here either. I just found out that at the very least some testing came back from my daughter, and she doesn't have pyruvate like she should, and therefore her body's not making ATP properly. It's really hard for her to absorb certain foods, and while they were doing this, it also tested some of the chemicals from other foods that were in her system, from store-bought prepackaged foods, and it was an eye-opener to me how much that the combination of those foods, the chemicals in those foods, and it, I mean, like, here it is, the Z-scores for it, which shows just how high it was, and that interacts with her stomach bile, and it negatively affects how she digests and creates energy for her body. And it is genetic, and there is a chance that our boys have it too. We're waiting for all of their genetic testing to come back. That's scary, and I know there's no cure and no real treatment, but I think if we can try to pull back from some of those foods and make more food of our own, it may help. Just, it's hard to be 100% dependent on yourself. You have to start somewhere, and I hate that it's come down to this. I really do. It's a difficult realization. So I will not talk about too much because I have been so emotional the past couple of days. It's just so hard to deal with. It's hard to watch what they're going through, and it's hard to be kind of helpless when you're like me, you're a bit of a control freak. So the one thing I can control is maybe growing my own food and teaching others to do so. So that's what we're doing. I'm a subject change now. It's a little much. I want to cry outside. So here's another lettuce down here. Look at that. And then I'll have to come back and cut all these off because the apple tree's kind of growing below the graft, which, you know, we don't want. You can pull them back, but sometimes they're just so woody like this and grow so quickly this time of year. Look at all those male squash flowers. So I see the female flowers just haven't opened, and believe it or not, this will probably open in a day or two. It goes from tiny to the size of the other one that you saw very quickly. So far we have one squash flower, you know, that's pollinated now, but it looks like pretty soon we may have a whole bunch because there are 5 plants here, not including the different types of squash. These are just the Cozell squash. This doesn't include, let's see if I can make it over there, all the squash over here, that, what are they, Zephyr squash, Zephyr, something like that. It's a really cool green, yellow squash with green at the end. But the first ones they say could be green or striped. So it's like the mystery. I did have one scallop squash. I think it's one of the ones that are dying. Some of these I just didn't do. So these squash, these are Zephyr and something else. I have to go look. I have it all written down. But you can see these not doing so great. It's because unlike these big ones, I separated these out after they germinated to let them grow in individual cells, 4.5 to 5 inch pots. These I didn't do that, so they got transplanted out much smaller, much more leggy, and so now I'm just kind of at the mercy of the environment to see how well they do. You can see they're quite small compared to the other ones because I didn't do it the same way. So I'm just gonna wait and see what happens. I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna pull it out because I did not plant it. And so this furrow is also going to be squash. And while they're making a comeback, and I'm sure they'll get massive out of nowhere, look, another, things just pop up, guys. So don't think when you're buying dirt that you're going to get dirt that doesn't have grass seeds or some weird stuff in it, because yeah, even those big garden stores have some crazy things growing in them. I really am confused at what all these plants are, because I know I have not planted anything at all. Like, I haven't planted beans or anything else here. I want to, I just haven't, so I'm kind of curious what's growing up. So we still probably, all but like this one may survive, but yeah, these are basically dead. I just need to pull them out and feed them to the animals. And then these will grow. And what I'm going to do is on this furrow, we ended up putting the swing set really close to it. Like, here's the swing set. And this was built after these furrows because I decided I wanted the kids to be able to play by me, so I could work in the garden and see them from anywhere I was in the yard. So this will be the end of the line for this, and the garden will start again on the other side of their play area. And so because I don't want anything trailing out to like this area in front of the swing where they'll like to jump off swings and play, I'm just going to plant some spineless okra. And also I went ahead and purchased heavy hitter okra, which also a spineless variety and produces a lot. So I may plant this in here. I do have some burgundy okra, but I don't want it near the kids' play yard because it is spiny and it can cause some irritation if it rubs up against them. Now, some of the squash is spiny too, but you know, they don't get as big as okra, so I don't have to worry about them like walking by and brushing their arms up against the plant. And you can see all of this, like there are a lot more flowers on these squash. These are a little bit smaller. They're planted out only about a week behind all of the other squash. And one day I'll have to get my paper and kind of show you exactly how I keep track of all of my information, because I do have a chart that my husband helped me create in Excel that has everything that I want to keep track of. Where I purchased the seeds, when I transplanted them, where I transplanted them, what the temperature was that day. All of that was important to me, and I couldn't find a tracker to do it, so I had him help me make my own. Reality is he volunteered to help me make it because I was struggling. So, and then this, I put all those cucumber plants in, the salt and pepper cucumbers. I was gonna plant my dark cucumbers, but then my salt and pepper cucumber seeds from Johnny Seeds came in, and so I went ahead and planted those. The thing is, dark cucumbers are smaller plants, and I don't know how big salt and pepper cucumber plants get, but we're gonna find out, because I got 250 seeds on sale for $3 because they were in overstock. So that's kind of it for today. There's so much more going on, but I really just wanted to show you guys what was going on with the squash, because, you know, here it is, mid-March, and we already have our first squash flower. I'm really excited about that, or our first female squash. And now it's pollinated, so I'll get to spend the next week or so updating you on it and showing off that squash. I'm really excited for that. So thank you guys for kind of hanging out with me and seeing my squash plants. I hope those of you who have had some questions about growing squash and pollinating them, this helps you out, and I'm excited to show off all the different types of squash that we get this season.